My name is Kayembe Ilunga, current general manager of MTC Maris, actually, I need to pronounce it properly. And Maris is the word in Damaranama, basically saying money. So our slogan, move with your money, hence the name MTC Maris. So distinguished guests, entrepreneurs, innovators, industry leaders, and hopefully friends quite soon. Thank you for the opportunity to address you guys on such an important topic. And if the speech isn't as polished as it should be, please blame Nguvi. She had me working 3 days this long weekend on an RFP that was submitted on Monday, so I haven't had the time to refine it, but hopefully it's good enough for you. So I think also before we start, I really want to tell you guys a story, right? So I'm a consultant, I'm in the tech field, I love my acronyms, I love my shorthand words. And when I started off my career at South African breweries, I was really flying. 3 months in, promoted. 1 month later, promoted again. And then they started talking about this guy called Tom. And Tom was going to fix this, and Tom was going to fix that. And for 2 weeks, I sat there hating Tom in my head. Tom is taking my job. I finally gathered the strength to go and talk to my boss, and I said, boss, I thought I was cooking here. I mean, who's this Tom guy? He said, no, Kayembe, Tom is target operating model, and you are part of it. So please, don't sit there and cook inside your own head. Ask the question. I'm happy to have a conversation while we talk, okay? So I think I want to take a slight deviation because obviously the theme was about technology and bridging the digital divide. But I think bridging the digital divide is not merely about technological advancements, right? But rather a fundamental imperative for social economic improvement and development. It's for inclusive growth, and it's for global competitiveness. And I think we're starting to see this, right? If you look at the different industrial revolutions, the impact that they've had in the time frames that they've been experienced in. But we'll dive a little bit more into that. So today we're gathering really to explore how technology serves as a powerful catalyst for startup growth, drawing on lessons, obviously, on challenges and remarkable opportunities that present themselves here in Namibia and obviously the rest of the continent. I'm a Pan-African, born in DRC, grew up in South Africa, married a woman from Okahau, and that's my life. When I get to the airport, they look at me funny. Born in DRC, South African passport, looks Nigerian with a Namibian domicile. Red flag, right? So it's really about making it together. And by the end of this conversation, I'm really hoping that we can all leave here energized with some new ideas, some different perspectives as well. And if you've got a comment, jump in and ask your question. I'm a consultant. I love having a conversation rather than giving a speech, right? So let's understand the digital divide quickly. Oh, sorry. Can you guys hear me when I don't speak into the mic, though? You can still hear me, okay? As long as it's recording, we're good. So first, some context, right, around the digital divide. And essentially, the digital divide, in my view, refers to the gap between those who have access to meaningful technology and those who don't. And I use the word meaningful because it's for things such as internet connectivity, smartphones, and digital literacy. So why is the word meaningful important? Because I know, and through our MTC's 30th birthday today, by the way, and through that and the reports that I've been reading, we have 2.17 million subscribers on our network. That is almost the amount of adults that are capable of taking a phone out. But why is it that only some of them, and why am I saying the word meaningful? Because a lot of them are Tamagotchis. And what is the impact of that? The impact of that is that you can't connect to 4G. You can't download the banking apps in order to actually access the full value proposition that the banks are offering. From an education perspective, even myself, PocketFin, wonderful financial education items on the internet. But if you don't have 4G, guess what? No access, right? From an employment, and I don't want to refer to South Africa too much because we're in Namibia, but if you're not on LinkedIn, there's a very high probability that you will not find a job in South Africa if you don't have a LinkedIn profile. I always say there's 3 types of people in employment. There's people who work hard and they barely get recognized, truth. There's people who market things that they haven't done and they get recognized more than the people who work hard. But the people who really work hard and market themselves are usually the ones who land up as leaders. So again, if you can't market yourself, if you can't market your achievements, I mean, this is on my LinkedIn. Who will know what you are and what you're capable of in this digital age in the fourth industrial revolution? So you see, just that small fact of a Tamagotchi versus a 4G phone completely changes your potential of how your life could turn out. Meaningful is the word. So, and again, right, if we look at this, the digital divide is not a new concept, yet its implications are dramatically intensified as we go into the different revolutions. If you look at the first industrial revolution, decades, almost hundreds of years, right? And the impact was a little bit, right? Second IR, third IR, fourth IR. What we start to observe is that those industrial revolutions, the time frame becomes shorter, but the impacts become bigger. So we're all talking about AI and all of these things in the metaverse. How many Namibians today actually can access AI tools? How many of them have actually accessed the metaverse? How many people in this room, right? And we are the leaders in innovation. So imagine walking out there and asking people about the metaverse. I think you're swearing at them. So we really need to take that into perspective, right? And you're laughing because it's true. That's the thing. So, and this divide is really particularly, pronounced in Africa, if we can see it. I lecture at Wits Business School part-time on the digital financial services class. And what we're starting to see that, I mean, I can't even afford a Vision Quest, right? But there's 50 million units that have been sold in the US alone. What does that mean? How many units have been sold in Namibia? Can we say 100? There's your divide. Right? I'm just bringing it to life, really, to really show you. So, although the continent, we've made significant strides, as it stands today, according to GMSA, last year, April, 33% of Africans, a third of Africans only have consistent, reliable internet access. Even here in Namibia, well, we know it. If you drive from here to Cape Town, which I've done a few times, there's about 3 hours in the south where it's me and my radio, and if there's a tire, it's shut off and change the tire and keep going. So that's also something we need to think about. 33% of Africans have access. In Namibia, we know about 64% earlier this year, we took a survey of the population had internet access earlier this year. That translates to about 1.97 million people. Where are the other 1.1 million? Where are the other 1.1 million? So what does this do? There's a third of our population who doesn't have access to financial literacy tools, to financial services, to education, and to employment opportunities. Where did I get this job? LinkedIn, click, apply, interviewed. Yes, it was a 6-month process, but we're here today, right? How many people are just as brilliant as me and could have delivered on this role if they were given the opportunities to learn and the opportunities to actually apply for this role? That is how we have to think. We have to think in impact. Why is this so important? Because there's 1 million people that we're leaving behind. And that's behind us, who are already behind the rest of the world. Put that into context, colleagues. So this means basically that almost half of our adult citizens face barriers to access of education, financial services, and healthcare. So, and obviously entrepreneurship opportunities, right? And I think, just leaning on Maurice a bit, because I am here under the Maurice flag, that's the reason we chose to go via USSD, right? Quick shout out, a bit of marketing. But in essence, my view was that anybody in this country should be able to take their phone, and if you're sitting in the south in Kalkran without a bank or an ATM, or on Umpelela Island on 2G network, you can dial *140 *682#, and you can take a savings product, you can take a microloan, you can take a funeral cover, you can take a medical product, and you can even send funds internationally with a bit of financial education. And on top of that, have access to prepaid water, prepaid electricity, airtime, and special data bundles. So That is really what we're going for. We are want to serve the underbanked and underserved. And I'm getting to bringing it together, the digital divide in the startup world. But I just thought I'd give you some context as to why this topic is so important. And when Ngui came to me last week, Thursday, despite everything we had to do, I said yes to having the conversation. I'm just joking, madam. So the digital inequality really perpetuates our socio-economic disparities. And if you combine that with the impact of the IRs in the timeframes, colleagues, we have a real problems on our hands. Why? Because generative AI is already old. But yet half our nation hasn't even experienced it. If this is what's happening now, 2030, 2025, 35, 2040, where are we in comparison to the developing world? It's a question we really have to ask ourselves. And it's a question that not ask ourselves, but we need answers to rapidly. And when I say rapidly, within the next 12 to 24 months, because come 2028, guess what? There's other things that are starting to come up, right? Quantum computing is already doing things. What are we going to do? Cybersecurity attacks that are based on quantum computers. We can't protect ourselves with that. You're getting nightmares, right? So I think it's important, right? So really, startups are really critical drivers of innovation, of employment, of economic diversity and resilience, and particularly on our continent. Startups solve local challenges, from mobile banking solutions to renewable energy, from agri-tech innovations to healthcare. And I was part of a project in Zimbabwe where we worked with a consortium called Blue Marble, and it was funded by the Bill and Gates Melinda Foundation. And in essence, what we had built was a microinsurance proposition where if a certain region had experienced drought, then we would automatically pay the farmers in that area. Why? If that region experiences drought, then they can't eat in this year, but also they don't have the seeds to plant next year. So if a farmer experiences drought this year, it's not just this year that's the impact. It has a ripple effect into the future as well. And by doing that, we're able to give farmers the opportunity to actually have seeds or have funds that they can then go and purchase seeds. So that's where we need to start heading towards to. And really, I urge you, colleagues, to please start looking at what are the local challenges that we can fix in our economy, in our own economy. That's just one example of agri-tech. But we all know, as startups, the ability to scale and to innovate is heavily dependent on the digital capabilities. So hence why I was giving that digital divide. If you don't have a market, how can you sell your innovation products into it? So part of leveraging technologies is really making sure that we address that digital divide very, very quickly with tangible outcomes. But access, why is it important? There's a few things that I want to really just touch on, right? Access to digital technology directly influences these things. So market access, financial inclusion, innovation and competitiveness, and networking and knowledge sharing. So with market access, digital channels allow startups to reach markets beyond their local boundaries. I mean, when we say names like Shin and Temu and Meta, these were all startups, right? AWS. I still have a picture, and you might hate the man's politics or him as a person, but there's pictures of Elon sleeping on Tesla floors, right? There's a picture of Jeff Bezos with the Amazon sign written in blue marker behind him. These guys were exactly where we were when they started their organizations. And because of the different technologies as internet connectivity, 4G, everything that came along with it, then they were actually able to leverage those and get that market access to go forward. The second one is financial inclusion. I think we've spoken so much, I've already mentioned a few things. But yes, the banks are doing great on USSD, but you cannot tell me that the same proposition on USSD is the same one that's offered on an app. So again, the financial education programs, PocketFin, were only on the website. They can only be accessed with quick internet, right? The other financial tools that you get through an app, I don't know, have you guys received any financial education notification via USSD? I got an there, so I'm good. Great. And I think the second one is innovation and competitiveness, right? if you look at cloud computing, AI, data analytics, digital marketing platforms, they really empower startups to enter the different markets. If you go back, a couple of decades ago, a marketing team was something that only a big company could afford, right? Now, there's companies, we were doing it in PwC. We were creating videos. We were creating marketing campaigns using AI. I mean, when I was at Wonderman Thompson, we had built a metaverse and we were having our stand-up sometimes in that metaverse, right? So again, it's really about how do we use the current technologies. But there's something that I think a lot of us overlook. If you look at artificial intelligence, that term was coined in, I think, 50s or 60s, 1956, if I'm not mistaken. So artificial intelligence has existed for almost 70 years. What has made it come to life? Internet, mobile devices, or devices to use it that are quick enough to process that information, big data. So AI, as we call it, or generative AI, is actually a combination of internet accessibility, of hardware that can access it. It's a combination of the big data industry as well, assisting to feed those algorithms to teach them. So don't just look at one technology and say, this is the technology I'm going to solve. Look at your challenge and look how different technologies can work. And sometimes they appear on the front end, like the generative tools we have now, but a lot of the times they appear on the back end, right? If we look at cloud servers, a lot of us actually, well, not in this room, but in general, a lot of people don't understand how Amazon and Azure and all of them work. Major, major, major part of where we are today. I don't think technology would be today if it wasn't for Satya Nadella and his friends a few years ago, right? Building those capabilities with Microsoft and in AWS. So there's a great example of this with a company I used to work with called Realm Digital. And in essence, when the metaverse started happening, they said, guys, it's not just about the metaverse. How do we take the metaverse, put in AI into that, so that whatever experience we can build, we can start to build a financial service advisor. So all of a sudden, instead of you paying a premium to a human being, you're paying a significantly instead of you paying a premium of which the commission is paid to a human being, you're now paying a significantly lower premium because of the OpEx cost that it is to run an AI metaverse that can advise you. I wouldn't say just like an advisor, but for more simple matters. So look at the challenge and don't just focus on one tool. And it's a mistake we often make. We focus on the technology. Technology, not addressing a challenge, is nothing, right? And there's a reason why the metaverse has phased out so quickly. Because what were the use cases? What was the cost to put it up, to support it? So what you start to see now is AI, generative AI. Why? It's easy, it's on your phone, and anyone can make a picture of themselves looking like a toy and send it to their friends. So just think about those things when going together. And I think, the reason why this session like this is very important is because the fourth point that I mentioned, right? And it's really networking and knowledge sharing. And online platforms, digital platforms, hubs like this really facilitate that collaboration, the mentorship, and the learnings, and accelerating those business growth. And I think, for me, the mentorship part is really important. Some of us who have walked these journeys have to give back, right? We have to mentor. I actively mentor about 2-3 people at a time, all the time. And it's wheels from consultants to startups to people who just want to understand more about this industry that we're in. So share that knowledge, colleagues. It's not a competition. I promise you now. It's only by coming together that we can start to overturn the tide that the digital divide has left us in. So yes, I think without bridging the digital divide, startups in underserved communities, rural areas, and secondary cities remain locked out of these opportunities. And this is why you started this network, isn't it? Right? So very, very important factor. So it's easy to look at all of these challenges and just be disheartened, colleagues. But I promise you, there is some good news in all of this, right? But in Namibia, our startup ecosystem is very vibrant, right? But it faces some of these challenges. And let's talk about the challenges first before we go into the opportunities. if we look at the challenges, right, one is infrastructure barriers. So in one of the lectures I give, I give one on the metaverse. And, it's easy for me to access the metaverse because of my Intel Dell and NVIDIA chip and everything else that I can access in and my fiber with, I won't mention the company because I took up the contract before I joined MTC. But I'm able to access it, right? How many people in Windhoek have a device that can process quick enough and access to internet, which is quick enough in order to actually access the metaverse? Infrastructure barriers. Network, whether it be towers, whether it be hardware to actually access these things as well. And for example, in Kalkran, there isn't a bank or ATM. So how do people access their financial services? Maris, but that's just an example. There's affordability challenges, right? If you take out, a fiber package, what is the cost of your monthly fiber package? What we pay for fiber is the income of certain breadwinners in Namibia. Fact. So how is it that you expect someone to spend their whole income to access the internet for what? Before eating? Before having a house? Before sending their children to school? Never. But there are some good examples that are starting to come out in the continent, right? In South Africa, especially in townships, there's a company called Fiber Time. And what Fiber Time does is they're offering, I think it's Fiber Time if I'm not mistaken, they're offering 100 megabytes per second for 5 Rand, equivalent of 5 Namibian dollars per day. Now that is fast, right? That is fast internet and very, very cheap for the day. And yes, some planning is involved. Get all the research you need to do, know what you need to look at, and then you pay your 5 Rand or your $5 and you move for that day on the internet. But what does that do? It takes the access to internet, high-speed internet, from $1,000, $1,500 to $5. If I have access once a week, it's $20. And guess what? For once a week, I've got 100 megabytes per second access to fiber. That's a significant change in someone's life. Whether it be employment, whether it be in financial inclusion, they can finally go onto PocketFin, right? At 8 o'clock that evening. They can finally go on LinkedIn and update their profile and share that they were here and now that they need a job because they're a great speaker. Whatever it is, that is the difference that it makes, colleagues. The other one is the digital literacy gap. I mean, I've spoken so many times around this, and many Namibians, and particularly in rural areas, and we know this, have lacked fundamental digital skills for critical entrepreneurship and innovation, right? But the reason why this is so important, and I think it's always, whenever it's education or a financial education thing or digital education, it's taken so lightly. But for my master's, I did a paper on, my research paper was on exploring the relationship between information, communication, and technology dissemination, so adoption, and individuals' economic well-being. Sorry for those big words, but when you do those research papers, you have to use specific words because it tells you what the structure that you need to follow. So in essence, what I wanted to find out is, in sub-Saharan Africa, what are the different levers that we should be pulling in order to increase individuals' economic well-being? I won't read you the whole 100 pages, but the results were basically, one was education, digital literacy education. And we see this. China's just announced that every student in school will start learning AI. Where are we? No, I'm asking. Are there any educators here?
A lot of schools, because digital literacy is part of the curriculum, if they have a teacher, they will probably teach it out of a book.
Oof.
Yeah, it happens.
Oof. Digital literacy out of a book.
They teach it out of a book. So if they have a teacher, they're lucky. If they have computers, they're lucky. If the computers have data, they're lucky. If there is MTC or Telkom that actually allow them to access the internet, they're lucky. That's where we are.
So there's 5 barriers, just quickly, before someone can actually access digital literacy programs. 5 barriers. And that's in Windhoek. Let's go down to the south or the north where my in-laws are from in Okahau. There must be 10, right? Electricity is one of them. There's a number of things. So these are things we need to consider. But I also think that these challenges have fantastic opportunities with them, right? Namibia is uniquely positioned. For a country in Africa, you're highly politically stable, right? And I think you take it for granted. But having run away from my birth country of DRC, having been raised in South Africa and coming to Namibia, I feel very peaceful in this country compared to where I've come from. And I think you're strategically located with your ports for entry, the way you are connected to the rest of the continent, and you're rich in resources. Who benefits from those is not a conversation that I'm privy to, and it's a conversation for another day. But it really positions us as potential technology and an innovation hub in Southern Africa, and I do not believe that we are taking advantage of that. So we do have some notable successes, and just a shout out to some of my competitors, right? I would love to put myself in the same bucket, but I've got a big brother with some deep pockets who help me out every now and then. But the likes of PayPal's, right? When it comes to mobile financial services, great product, great product. And before I had Morris, I had PayPal's, right? Pay Today, another great product, right? These are innovations. And yes, they are backed by big brothers, but it is innovations, and we should be looking how do we use them. And again, the renewable energy and agri-tech sector. Colleagues, by 2030, Namibia will be the third largest producer of oil behind Angola and Nigeria. Huge, 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 huge. And I read in the paper, there was a consortium with one of the gentlemen that I'm actually working with, and they were actually given by FNB billions to invest in SMEs in the sector. Have any of you applied? Ish is the answer, right? Literally, eh? 5-4? Apply for funding from that consortium. So the consortium got given billions. It was in the newspaper. They were given billions from our sponsoring bank to actually invest in SMEs so that local participants, well, locals can participate in the renewable energy sector. Hey, I see I've got the conversation going, right? There's billions sitting there. None of you have applied, right? So the deadline, I don't know. It was in, just Google. I'm sure there's something there. We need a QR code for you at the next event. You're right. So young Namibian innovators, we really leverage IoT and data analytics to increase agricultural productivity. Why haven't we imported that product that was built by Blue Marble? Whoever's in agri-tech, I'm happy to connect you to the Blue Marble. We can do something here, right? We've had 100 years of droughts the worst drought in almost 100 years. Yes, ma'am. We can chat. Oh, no, definitely. I'll chat to you afterwards. So let's just think about that. The oil is coming. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I know some family members who already have export licenses and are just waiting, right? Get involved, guys. Get involved. Why is this important? The renewable energy, the energy sector is because when that comes, one, it will bring new technologies, new skills into our country. But not only that, it also comes with investors and eyes. So if you have a startup that is in that sector, that is leveraging and that has something innovative in it, you're not just showing it to the Namibian people, but you have an international audience that is busy looking at what you're currently doing. So use that, right? Think about the sector. Think about agriculture. Are we going to pay grants again next year? Or are we going to do something that actually enables the government to stop paying those grants? Why haven't we thought about an agri-product for those farmers? Some sort of technology that helps them when to plant, how to plant, why to plant. And I know we already spoke about the digital divide, and a lot of people in farming areas obviously are part of that conversation. But technology happens on two fronts, as I'm sure you're all aware here. It happens on the front-end capability, flashy, nice stuff, which you need an iPhone to access, but it also happens on the back end. What about creating something, an engine that speaks, that's connected to the weather services, the GPSs, that tells the guys the rain is coming, it's delayed this year, plant this year. Why? Because this is how much we've got of this stock. So plant this so that you'll be the only one to be able to reap the seeds of this certain type of product. There's smart ways of doing it. SMS costs you 20 cents if you take a package with MTC. USSD costs you $1. So you could build the tech on the back end, but you could really simplify the engagement with your clients on the front end. Just think about that. So I think we also, as Africans, which is the funny thing, we all talk about Ubuntu, Ubuntu, Ubuntu. But I'll be honest, we hardly practice Ubuntu sometimes, especially between us different countries. And I'll be bold enough to say that, right? I'm allowed to say that. I've got basically three identities, right? Congolese, South African, and Namibian. But across the continent, we've seen numerous examples of how bridging digital divide fuels startup success and national development, colleagues. So we at Maris took a book out of this. And before we started, we took a trip to Kenya. Said, if we're going to launch mobile money, we need to see how the best on the continent are doing it. And it's M-Pesa. I will say it, I will argue it, and that is where I want to go to, right? That's where I want to reach. I want to be able to have, like I said, for $300, someone sitting on Umpelela Island, someone sitting in Kalkrand or in the south and dialing *140 *682# and having a full access to financial services. That is my goal within the next couple of years. So we went there and we learned, right? And one of the things that they said as well, which is I think is also a challenge that we face here, is that the regulator is trying to do what they can. But if you look at our traditional industries, it's been the banks. So for example, for mobile money, what you find is that a lot of the regulation that's implied of me, or some of it, is based on banking, right? So for example, cash out or withdrawals, banks charge bank fees. So they have to give a free cash out. I don't charge any bank fees, so why do I have to give a free cash out? Just some examples. Yes. Sorry? No, not at all. Not at all. So I don't take any fees from the consumer. No fees for cash in, no fees for merchant payments, no fees for your first cash out. You have no credit on your phone, you dial it, and then I will pay for the USSD. So even dialing the USSD, whether you got $0 on your phone, you can still access Maris, you can still transact on Maris, and that is the whole point, right? When we're building this product, we're focusing on the underbanked and previously unserved. So, I mean, in Nigeria as well, we've got examples of the likes of Andela, of Flutterware, digital skills training, and I think robust FinTech ecosystem. And they've positioned Namibia as a player in the global tech market, Nigeria as a player in the global tech market, right? And I think it really demonstrates a powerful link between the digital infrastructure and also startup success. So Egypt's digital transformation, if we look at Egypt as well, Egypt identifies digital transformation as a key driver for sustainable development and focuses on cybersecurity and digital product development. What is our cybersecurity framework as a country? I'm asking. And you know why I'm asking this, colleagues? It's not about today. It's about first AI implemented on normal computing. In about 3 to 4 years, there's already a quantum computer. So imagine a quantum computer and AI. How are you defending against that? Now we're quiet. Okay. So, and I think I wanted to highlight these different points because it speaks to my research paper, right? If you look, there were a number of levers that really increased socioeconomic levels in sub-Saharan Africa. The one was digital literacy, like we mentioned. Infrastructure, again, massive infrastructure is needed. Government cooperation, and obviously investment. And I think the government cooperation is a real one, right? If you look, for example, to import a phone or to import a laptop, first there's import fees, right? And then there's still VAT. So in essence, if we really wanted to bridge the digital divide, we could order a large batch of mobile phones and say, please government, we've ordered 100,000 phones and they're coming in, and could you take off the exempt from the tax and the VAT? Why? Because we're going to distribute these phones across the country. And CRAN. You see what I mean? And what does that mean? Import of a mobile device plus VAT, you're looking at minus 30% of the cost. If you buy in bulk, take off another 10 to 15% of the cost. These are some things that we need to start thinking about. So I think these examples clearly touch on the technological gaps and how to bridge them. I think we really need to start thinking about how do we enable innovation, how do we create wealth, and how do we transform our communities. And I beg you, colleagues, I know a good idea and a good tech is something to lean on, but the best innovations come from solving community challenge. Whether it's Meta, where they wanted to communicate as a university, whether it's such an adult thinking, hey, it's expensive for us to install all of these on-site servers. Why don't we just build something in the cloud and charge people a software as a service fee? These are some of the things that we need to think about. Take your challenge. Don't look at one technology and bring the different pieces together. And if we start to look at how can we concretely bridge Namibia's digital divide gap and foster a robust startup ecosystem, there's a few things that we really need to think about, and I've alluded to them. Firstly, the infrastructure development. Secondly, digital literacy and skills development. And you've heard some of the ideas, whether it's the hardware, the internet access of how it can be done. Thirdly, policy and regulatory reform. Someone told me to talk to NAMRA as well. And then lastly is the access to funding. And like I say, yes, we are limited resources now, but with the industries that are starting to open up in our country, there's more and more foreign investment that's coming in. And some of those foreign investors are a lot riskier than the banks, right? Your banks want to see statements, they want to see a building, they want to see this. Some of these guys are purchasing companies based off ideas and high fidelity prototypes, right? So let's think about that. The eyes are opening. It's 2025. By 2030, we'll be pumping oil, hopefully, if everything goes to plan, right? So what does that mean? You've got 5 years to get ready. If that, Shell's already here. I'm so sorry, it's a gulp. Total's already here. And with them come big investments. Why is Access Bank coming in? Are they doing this for fun? No. They've got a real established network, and these are some of their major clients. So where are they starting their banking proposition from? I think you can take a guess, right? So on a broader scale as well, if you look at Africa, we have to collaborate to bridge that gap, right? If you look, some of the things that we have to be looking at are one, regional infrastructure and shared learnings and best practices. From a regional infrastructure perspective, right, there's initiatives such as the African Continental Free Trade Area, which offer us a vast market potential for digital-enabled startups. But guess what? Digital infrastructure and harmonized policies have to support this. And we're not even talking to each other yet on those fronts, right? We've got this trade agreement. What are we doing with it? It's just buy and sell. No one is leveraging it for the technology. So again, shared learning. I mentioned about the successes that we went to go look in East Africa. DRC, where I'm from, you want to see mobile money. Every single corner on the road has an agent. You can land in Kinshasa and not have a bank account. If you've got cash, you put it in your wallet, and that's where you go and use it everywhere you want to be. I've got some colleagues here from East Africa and Tanzania, same thing, right? Agents all over. So how do we learn from some of these other territories, and how do we bring it back? Sorry, in conclusion, because I'm already getting looks here in front, so I'm going to look at you guys so I don't get too much of the looks. I think in conclusion, right, bridging the digital divide is not just about technology. It's about empowering people. It's about unlocking potential. It's about building an inclusive and prosperous future. And Namibia is currently standing at a crossroad, right? It has every opportunity to lead the digital innovation because of what I've mentioned earlier on, and becoming a beacon of innovation and economic dynamism, that's the word, in Africa. That's the word. Sorry, Mom, English bundles are done for the day. So, in closing, to all the policymakers, the entrepreneurs, the investors, the educators, the community leaders that are here today, I want us to commit together to bridging this digital divide. The startups we empower today will become the engines of innovation, the creators of employment. Government, they said it, creators of employment, and the champions of a sustainable tomorrow. Let's harness technology to ignite startup growth, to strengthen our economic resilience, and build a future filled with opportunity for every Namibian, every African, and beyond. I thank you.